Welcome to Building with Brick, foundational wisdom on coaching, careers, and Christ. This leadership podcast was spawned by Coach Brickner's book, So You Want to Be a Coach, which is the story of a corporate executive who made a drastic career change and became a head men's basketball coach. Dr. Brickner's book is available in paperback, ebook, and audiobook on Amazon.com, or go to his website, www.drjoebrickner.com. That's drjoe Brickner.com. While you're at it, check out Dr. Brickner's new book, America Lost in Place. You can get it in paperback, hardback, ebook, or audiobook on Amazon.com, or just go to Dr. Brickner's website. Now, here's this week's podcast. Welcome to Building with Brick, foundational wisdom on coaching, careers, and Christ. I'm Joe Brickner, your host. I have a repeat guest with me today, Chuck Smrt. Chuck was with us about a year ago and did an absolutely great job in two different sessions. One telling us about what the NIL is, name, image, and likeness, and for college athletes. And the other was talking about the transfer portal. Welcome, Chuck.
Good to be back on the second most popular podcast in the nation behind the Kelsey brothers.
Yeah, that's true. Well, Chuck, a lot has probably happened in the years since you and I went through this, and because it was a lot of things were changing at the time, and there are changes in the future, I know. Why don't you bring us, first of all, up to date on just kind of a quick definition of what NIL is. And I know there were two different types of NIL that we went through with last year's session. And then what the portal, maybe some of the rules for it, and then talk about the changes.
Okay. And last time we talked about those two areas, and I think I mentioned that those two areas, the results of those two changes in those areas created the biggest changes in intercollegiate athletics in the last 30 to 40 years. Right. And while it has not been as great as that, the changes over the past year have been very significant. And I think the world of collegiate amateurism is gone. And how that word is defined going forward, I guess will be very similar to the Olympics, where there were strictly amateurism and then the pros started coming, and to whatever intercollegiate athletics will be defined at going forward. I think it's going to be difficult to define it as true amateurism. So, and now that I'm on my little soapbox, I'll just go on a little bit further. There are approximately 500,000 athletes in all three divisions, 1, 2, and 3.
This is NCAA.
NCAA, that's right, only. The NIL, the significant impact that NIL is having and changing the word amateurism, it's probably only been impacted by less than 1% of all the NCAA athletes. So you have NIL coming in and significantly changing the amateurism concept as a result of about 0.5% of all divisions NCAA. So because so few athletes, if you look at it across all divisions, are getting any significant NCAA NIL money. Yet everything is changing because of the NIL money. So what's the future for a Division III women's swimming program? How is the NCAA going to fund that if the amateurism concept is changing. And again, just to go one step further, if football leaves, if all the NCAA schools, if there's a football semi-pro, and so none of the football teams none of the universities are getting money from the football teams, how are they going to support the any of the support? Most Division II and III championships are supported by Division I. How is that going to impact the basketball tournament? If football goes, will basketball go? So, you know, in intercollegiate athletics today, our system is so envied by the internet, all the other countries, because of our ability to put on first class intercollegiate sports programs. That's a feeder for the Olympics. If schools have to pay athletes because they're employees, if schools have to pay NIL money, similar in football and in other women's sports, they're going to not have any money. Schools are not going to be able to put on programs. They'll have to withdraw. They have to quit providing certain programs, and then you're going to have the NCAA, the ability for the U.S. to compete in Olympic sports hurt. So I think all of those are things that are being discussed now as a result of the ramifications of NIL. Okay, let me get a little bit more specific. So last time I talked about NIL, there are basically two concepts, if you will. One is where an athlete signs a contract with a public service agency and says, I will do X for you to promote your organization. As a result, then, the American Heart Association or whatever is going to pay that athlete $1,000 a month, 10,000, 30,000 a month to do a tweet or two a month that says promote American Heart Association. Well, how does that public service agency get the money? Well, that's donated by a collective. That collective is composed of boosters of the school. Now, the other way for the athlete to get the NIL money is directly through a business, a local car dealership. We're sitting here in the Kansas City area. Lawrence is 50 miles away, 40 miles away. Let's say there's a car dealership that wants to provide $20,000 to a KU basketball player to come for a half hour at the dealership so people can come in and get his autograph. Perfectly legal. They could pay him 50,000 for a half hour to come in and do that. So those are your two main type of collective activities. And most athletes will have agents that will help them arrange those deals.
Okay, now the first collective where the university is actually involved in that, is that, do they have to give the same amount of money to everybody that's on the team, or can they just give it to one person off of it?
Well, you said the university's involved. The university's only involved to the extent that their boosters are involved.
Okay.
That was the case until last week, when legislation was changed last week that said a university could be involved in making arrangements for an athlete's NIL. Let me give you the example. 6 months ago, you're the head coach at a top basketball school. The prospect comes in and the coach said, "We really want you here." And the kid and the prospect says, "How much NIL money can I get?" That coach was supposed to say, "I can't guarantee you any money. I can tell you our top players last year, from my understanding, are making about anywhere between 800,000 to $1 million a year. I can't guarantee you that, but that's what I understand. You'll have to go to the collective, but I'm not involved with any of those arrangements. That's what I understand with the collective. Now, because of what was passed last week, the coach says, okay, we have a collective, and it's my understanding the collective is paying $1 million, and it's down the hall. You go down and talk to them. I can't get involved with it. So is it semantics? Probably, but the school can be involved in arrangements. I mean, in facilitating it. The school's not supposed to be involved in the negotiation of the deals, but the school can put that athlete, they can walk them down there where before they couldn't walk them down there.
Okay.
But what hasn't changed are the two basic principles. The money can't be based upon how many points. It can't be based upon achievement. And technically, it can't even be based upon play. If that athlete signs that agreement with that collective to tweet for the American Heart Association, and it can't say that you're only going to get this if you're a participant on the men's basketball team. So you could have the situation where they quit and and people have worded that differently. For example, this contract is valid as long as you're a resident of this state or of this town. Different collectives have handled that different, but those two principles, and that's the last thread, if you will, of amateurism, that you can't get it based upon points or number of tackles or things like that. And it's not supposed to be based upon your participation in a particular for a particular team. There was a football player, a prospect out of California, and then was going to go to Florida, I think was the situation. And he decided to not go to that school. And then there was some discussions about whether that collective who had signed him, if he could still get the money. And I don't know how that was resolved.
Interesting. When we talked last year, you were telling me that in some of the bigger programs, everybody on a team, let's say there's 15 guys on a basketball team or 15 gals on a basketball team, each of them could get maybe 30,000 a year, 40,000 a year, or whatever. They all got the same amount. What did that fall under?
Well, that was an NIL agreement that the collective or the local car dealership made with everybody on the team.
Okay.
Now, many institutions have that for basketball, all their basketball players, and some of their football players, or all of their football players, but you could have varying amounts, either because the collective has said that athlete is worth more because the quarterback, being a defensive lineman, I take offense at this, but the quarterback probably gets more visibility and has more popularity than a lineman. And you could argue, I think correctly, that their name, image, and likeness is greater. But so you will have on some teams, either because the collective did it, either collective gave everybody the same amount, or everybody got a certain amount and certain people got other amounts. Or in the business deals, the car dealership is going to pay the quarterback a lot more money than the other team. So yes, you are going to have on most of your basketball teams for your elite teams, everybody's getting a lot. At your Power Five, at your elite programs, I think you're looking at, 300, 400, 500,000 a year.
Wow. Yeah, that's not an amateur.
No. We haven't seen this yet, but I think it's coming, is that what are the fallout issues from someone 18 having 300,000 in their pocket?
Well, isn't there some type of regulation that says a school has to provide so many hours of financial,
Most of them, it's 5 hours,
what, 5 hours? Is that what it is?
5 hours annually.
Okay. But it doesn't say assigning someone to basically help them. It's just you have to go to class for 5 hours and
Yes, well, there could be, yeah, it's 5 hours of some education, however that's defined by the school. But, when you have, I think your choices that you make, the chances of you have a chance of making more wrong decisions with $300,000 in your pocket than you do with $5 in your pocket.
that's true. I I was exposed to something recently that we have a kid that we strongly support who's a college basketball player, Division I. And I got a letter from the school saying, giving us, saying, we know you support this young man. Would you consider sending in 300 or 500 or $1,000 to support him going forward? Is that a collective doing that?
Yes, I don't think the school that, well, an athletic department's not going to, well, an athletic department could solicit you for money, but that money's going to go into the general athletic department fund. So to say it's going to go strictly to that athlete, that's coming from the collective.
Okay, because it did say the money was going to go to that athlete.
Then that's got to be coming from the collective.
Okay, interesting. No, it didn't happen the year before, but it happened this year.
Well, because about 9 or 10 months ago, a school could promote a collective. Again, it's evolved so much over the past 2 years. 2 years ago, a school couldn't even technically mention a collective because they couldn't promote the collective. A year ago, they said they could promote the collective, and that's why you had all these head coaches out there going around soliciting money, saying it's important for you to donate to the collective because we need that in our recruiting.
Okay, interesting.
When this whole thing started, there was this 12-foot concrete wall between the school and the collective. It went then to about a 4-foot chain link fence. And now the fence is, is all that's there is the remnants of all that's fallen down. So you just kind of step over it back and forth, I guess. But
How about the portal? How has that changed?
it's totally changed recruiting, and it depends what level you're on. So if you're, again, one of these elite basketball programs, I haven't seen figures, I just heard anecdotal things that those schools are less concerned about the high school prospects. They'd rather focus on the transfers because they're a proven quantity.
Right.
As you recruit a high school kid, how are they going to be in college with all the different social and competitive levels, and some are going to fail. Why not let the lesser schools, see who they have, and just pick off the top. So that continues to be a significant thing. And the second thing is player retention, that the odds are there's going to be very few players are going to play for you for all 4 years.
Yeah.
And your roster is going to turn over. Again, this is anecdotal, but I remember a coach saying when this started, we put one coach to make sure we retained our existing team, make sure it increased their focus. Then they thought, why? Let's just see what happened. Maybe we don't care about retention. We're just going to if they want to leave, they want to leave. Let's just make sure we have other people coming in.
Yeah. And I said this last time, it just would be so difficult to be a head coach in college today. With in the past, you always tried to build your program. Your seniors were really important because they were there for their fourth year and they knew the system. They could teach the younger ones the right way to do things and all this and that. That is out the door.
Well, and so the change that you alluded to was you can now transfer as many times as you want. You have to, for an undergrad, you have to be academically eligible at the school you're leaving. You have to be in good academic standing. You have to be eligible, in essence, academically. So you can't be on university probation for some type of criminal offense or something like that. So as long as you are eligible, you can transfer. You're still not going to be able to transfer during the year and compete you're not going to be able to compete for two teams the same year, but you can transfer as often as you want. So you really could have within your 5-year window 3, 4, maybe even 5 teams.
Wow. Now that's effective August 1st. Is that what?
And for now grad transfers, the difficulty with that, because you had a lot of that occurring, and because that was a way around multiple transfers. Once you graduated, then you had an extra transfer, if you will. But the biggest difficulty schools are having with that is you have to be, in order to be immediately eligible, you have to be enrolled full-time in a graduate program. So let's say a school of education at a certain school, an athlete says, well, I'm going to go over there and enroll full-time. Well, he goes there because he wants to play. He quits in the spring after the season's over with, after his eligibility is over with, and he quits his educational program. So at some point, the School of Education says to the basketball office, no more. You're not dumping your people over here on us because it hurts our retention as a graduate program. So you're seeing more universities starting graduate certificate programs, which are 1 year, and there's no retention issues because it's just a certificate program. So you're seeing a lot more athletes going into a graduate certificate program.
So it's a 1-year program. You get a certificate, but you don't get a graduate degree because you haven't fulfilled 2 years there.
Yeah, you get a certificate, but it meets the legislation, and there's no department per se. So so again, the education department, communications department, it's not looking bad that they're having all these people come to their graduate program and drop out after a year, or really after a semester.
What other changes do you foresee, or are there some others that you just haven't talked about yet?
Financial aid is kind of opened up. You can't worry about an athlete getting too many meals when they can go down to the Wendy's and sign autographs and get all the burgers they want. So financial aid is loosened recruiting of transfers still is probably the most significant transfer recruiting issue. For example, a school contacting the athlete before they're in the portal. Now, does that go on? Of course, because you see some athletes, they get in the portal at 10 o'clock in the morning is when their name is added, and by noon they've committed to a certain school already. Well, wow, that was a short recruitment period. But there's been conversations between the handler or the agent for that prospect and the school, or someone representing the school, at least in general terms.
Yeah.
So an AAU coach for the athlete calls the assistant coach and says, I know a 6'8" forward who averages 30, in the Big Ten, and might be interested. Are there any scholarships that you have available for next year? Well, I can't talk to you about any individuals, but we have a scholarship. We have scholarships available.
Mm-hmm.
So, you use the certain terminology, but when does that go too far? And that's what many schools receive letters from the NCAA about. Were you out recruiting before the
Mentioned last year, my grandson was playing for Marist College, which is a small Division I on the East Coast. And I played for 2 years for him. He went into the portal this year. He's didn't take him too long, about 2 to 3 weeks that he was in the portal, and he decided on going to Idaho next year. But he could, I like his dad or myself or any relative or anything couldn't contact anybody saying, "Hey, this kid's going to go into the portal." He had to go through an AAU coach that he had, and then some other personal trainers that he had used back home who had contacts at major college level to tell them that he was going into the portal and that he was interested in certain leagues or certain geographic locations, etc. So they had to go through all that instead of just being able to call the school and say, "Hey, I'd like to transfer there." Do you see it going to the point where the kid actually be able to just call the school and say, "Hey, I'd like to come to your place and I'm going to get into the portal"?
It goes on through informal channels now. So why not just open it up? The idea of the portal is that once they go in, then your grandson could have called whoever he wanted to. He could have at that point. It just he couldn't before he entered the portal.
Okay.
And now the portal was supposed to be the start of the recruitment, but obviously, that's not occurring.
In his case, it was. I mean, he was trying to do everything the right way by the rules and everything. So he waited. He waited to actually get into the portal to actually talk to his head coach and told him he was going into the portal, which you don't even have to do that. I mean, you just go down to a different office and say, "Hey, I want into the portal," and they have, I think, 2 days to get your name submitted. And
That's right. So, I read this morning that in the FBS schools, so you're basically talking about 75 schools times 120 athletes, which is about 9,000 football players. About almost 4,000 entered the portal. And again, some of those of 120, how many of those don't play a whole lot, but that's what 40 some percent. And basketball, I haven't read a statistic recently, but basketball was running more than that. So odds are, if you're a basketball player, you're going to transfer at least once.
Yeah.
And football, it's becoming even more prevalent there also. And now, if it's easier in the sense you can transfer again, you're on the move a lot.
Well, Chuck, we just got a minute or two left. Is there anything that you'd like to tell us to summarize?
No, I just think it's going to be interesting. How is football going to play out the next 5 years? Will the top 50, 60, 70 go off and form their own organization where football won't be part of a university anymore?
Yeah.
Using KU because it's near us. It could be the KU football company. They don't go to school. It's just that KU, they have an affiliation with KU, and that's it. And who knows? But that could be it. And then what's going to happen to the basketball tournament? And what impact is that going to have on the hundreds of thousands of other athletes out there who don't make any money on NIL, who are going there to get a degree and to get a job?
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be amazing. It really is. Well, Chuck, thank you so much for shedding the light on what's going on. My guest has been Chuck Smrt. He has 17 years with the NCAA before he started his own consulting group, and it's called the Consulting Group. He's been doing that for 24 years, an expert in this field. And Chuck, we sure appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us today. Hope you'll come back again because this is a changing field.
Could change next week. So, okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, Chuck.